And Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept the humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Sri Prabhupada. All glories to our beloved speaker for today, His Grace YASODEVA. Prabhuji, we can't thank you enough for accepting this service. We understand how busy you are, so we very much appreciate that you could squeeze your time to be here to be with us. I think we have two verses we're covering today.
Yes, 29 and 30.
Yes. So you may go ahead. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for keeping me engaged in devotional service. Thank you, devotees, for coming to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't have any qualification except that I'm in close enough proximity to Sahadev Prabhu that I get invited by default. Anyway, we're also fortunate to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, from His Divine Grace, which is the topmost spiritual scripture, the Grantaraj, the king of all books. It's said that every single syllable is saturated with Krishna prema. And although I don't always see it quite as such, but I have faith that if we continue to hear regularly, then we can also awaken pure love of Krishna in our hearts. So thank you, devotees, for participating in that. We've already heard Jaya Radha Madhava, so I'll just recite Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, titled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. Text number 29 and 30. I'll read 29 first. Pramadayo yat krita setupala yat karanam vishvam idam chamaya agyakari yasya pishachacharya aho vimumnas charitam vidhambanam. Word for word says, Brahma adaya, demigods like Brahma, yat whose krita activities, say to religious rites. Krita, by the way, in Sanskrit is where we get the English word create, to do something, to make something happen. Krita, create. Anyway, palaha, observers. Yat, one who is. Karanam, the origin of. Vishvam, the universe. Idam, this. Cha, also. Maya, material energy. Agyakari, order carrier. Yasya, whose. Pishacha, devilish. Karya, activity. Aho, O my Lord. Vibhum naha, of the great. Charitam, character. Vidambanam, simply imitation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This is Kashyapa Muni speaking to his wife Diti about Lord Shiva, who is passing over them at that time. Kashyapa Muni, of course, is reminding Diti that it's not a good time for conception because Shiva is passing along this area with all of his bhutas. Lord Shiva is known as Bhutanath, the shelter and sustainer and maintainer of all the ghosts, goblins, and creatures that are lower than human, sometimes even lower than animal. Generally, they're inauspicious and tortured as a result of their very poor karma. But Lord Shiva gives shelter to them all. And so, if Diti and Kashyapa conceive right now, there's a chance that they could enter into that, into the body that they're creating by conception. So anyway, Kashyapa is reminding Diti about the glory and power of Lord Shiva. And he says, demigods like Brahma also follow the religious rites observed by him. He is the controller of the material energy, which causes the creation of the material world. He is great, and therefore his devilish characteristics are simply imitation. Purport. Lord Shiva is the husband of Durga, the controller of the material energy. Durga is personified material energy, and Lord Shiva, being her husband, is the controller of the material energy. He is also the incarnation of the mode of ignorance and one of the three deities representing the Supreme Lord. As his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison. Nice glorification of Lord Shiva here. I want to comment on both verses, and they're very different. So I think, if it's all right, I'm going to recite some Pranam Mangalarchana mantras, and then we'll continue to the other verse as well. So please bear with me, devotees. I cannot help but first glorifying my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Parampara, and all the great devotees by whose grace we get the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, by whose grace we can try to understand something about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so we should always remember them by offering such prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindham Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srimad Bhagavatam, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So, dear devotees, we're hearing some nice glorification of Lord Shiva before we go on to the next verse, which is quite a different subject. But herein Srila Prabhupada is saying something quite remarkable, that Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is a subject that's hard for many to understand, and I certainly can't comment much except to recite the verse spoken by Brahma himself, who says that Lord Shiva, Kshira, what is that verse actually? Kshira Dhara, that Lord Shiva is to the Supreme Lord just like yogurt is to milk. And I'm not going to make you all wait while I find the verse. That would be... Oh, found it. Just like yogurt is to milk. Anyway. So similarly, Lord Shiva is to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's actually an incarnation of the Lord, Govinda, but in contact with material energy. Krishna, of course, does not have any contact with material energy. He's entirely spiritual. The material energy is just a shadow of his own spiritual potency. Just like we can't really touch our shadow, similarly, the Lord, he never touches the material energy. But his form as Lord Shiva is an incarnation in contact with the mode of ignorance for the purpose of sustaining the material universe, as we're hearing here. Being the husband of Durga, he actually controls the material energy. This is an anecdotal story. I'm going to tell you something that's not in the scriptures, so you can take it with a grain of salt. But I have a dear friend who I was in the brahmacharya ashram with. And he said one time he had a very powerful dream about Lord Shiva. wherein he entered into some forest grove, and then he saw the form of Lord Shiva there, and he was enormously tall for some reason, and that this devotee, his name is Vidyapati Prabhu, he bowed down and said, "Oh, Lord Shiva." Lord Shiva said, "Please ask for some benediction." And then he said, my friend Vidyapati said to him in the dream, so you just take it as you like, but said to him, "Can you please explain Shiva Tattva to me?" And apparently in the dream, Lord Shiva said to him, "That's very complicated. Please ask for something else." So then Vidyapati in the dream prayed, "Please give me pure devotional service to Lord Krishna." So the truth is that Shiva Tattva is hard for us to understand. The Lord does not contact material energy, and yet he does have this form where he is mixed with the material mode of ignorance. So it's like yogurt is to milk. Yogurt is really just milk, but at the same time, yogurt is not milk. It cannot go back into milk. It cannot revert to its original form. While milk can make unlimited varieties of products, the Supreme Lord can have unlimited forms, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anantarupam, but Shiva, however, is his own unique form. So I think that's sufficient for our understanding as Krishna Bhaktas. Still, we respect all of the demigods and appreciate all the forms of the Lord, although our fixation, of course, is on the forms of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. So, still, Prabhupada saying here that we should appreciate the great example of Lord Shiva and how even though he's married to the material energy, quite literally controls the material energy. I mean, that's every man's fantasy, to have just the greatest of all women, Durga. She controls everything. She's so attractive that even the great demigods are bewildered. And yet he has complete control because of being detached. So therein setting a great example for us, which is really a theme of this chapter, is men and women having sexual attraction and learning to get over it and seeing the results of what can happen. So it is very fitting that Srila Prabhupada says in this purport that Lord Shiva is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. In fact, it's because of Lord Shiva's detachment that his wife's father, Daksha, was very displeased with him. Of course, when Durga had her form as Sati, she was the daughter of Daksha. And Daksha once upon a time wanted to have a big family party centered around a sacrifice, a yagya. As is traditional culture, you don't just get together to watch football like Americans, but whenever they get together, there'd be some sort of religious ceremony going on. And so Daksha invited everybody in the universe, all the who's who, to come to this big party that he was having, but somehow he did not send an invitation to his dear daughter Sati and to her husband Lord Shiva, because Daksha does not like Lord Shiva, because Daksha gave his daughter to be Shiva's wife, but Shiva did not even provide a home. They just sit underneath a tree in Ayodhya, and he's covered in ashes and surrounds himself with all sorts of people. And naturally, I mean, it's hard for us to judge, but if I were a father of a young girl, I'd be a little concerned about the betrothed as well. So Daksha, however, he could not appreciate Lord Shiva's tattva, could not appreciate Lord Shiva is actually a form of the Lord, could not appreciate that. And so Sati was not invited, Lord Shiva was not invited. Sati knew that this party was going on and she wanted to go, and she told her husband, as is very natural, she wanted to be part of the socializing. And Lord Shiva warned her, "I don't think you should go. Your father doesn't like me very much." Maybe some of the men here can relate. I don't know if anyone has any issues with their father-in-laws. Fortunately, my father-in-law likes me so much because he doesn't speak English, I don't speak Russian, so we just smile at each other. There's no cause for conflict. It's an ideal situation. But anyway, Lord Shiva warned Sati, "I don't think you should go. Your father doesn't like me. Something's going to happen." Dear devotees, as you all know, Sati, she does go, and then there's insults made. And of course, Sati then feeling so embarrassed to be the daughter of someone who's so offensive to her husband, Shiva. She says, I don't even want this body that I received from you. How tough is this? She says, I'm embarrassed to have this body that I received from you, who are so offensive to the Lord, Shiva. And so I'm going to give up this body. And she sat down and with her meditation burst into flames. Hence the origin of the sati rite. I mean, that's hardcore. Of course, then Lord Shiva came and, how should we say it? How should we put it lightly? He laid the smackdown upon Daksha and his cronies and punished everybody severely and cut off Daksha's head and replaced it with a goat and punched out people's teeth, and all sorts of things happened. All sorts of stuff went down. My favorite part of that story, however, is that later, after Shiva had delivered due justice to Daksha for his offensiveness and for his insults and for his failing to uphold Dharma in the universe, Shiva then went back to Ayodhya. He sat down. No, not... Why am I saying Ayodhya? He went back to... where did he go back to? I'm getting myself all confused now with some names. I'm sorry. Anyway, he went back to his abode and he sat down just peacefully in meditation as he was before this whole incident happened, as if nothing had happened. Brahma, however, came there and said to Shiva something that I think is one of the most valuable instructions in our socializing in this world. Such a valuable instruction Brahma gave to Lord Shiva. Even though Brahma, as is described in this verse, also follows the rules and regulations put out by Lord Shiva, also worships Lord Shiva, still, they're like co-workers, they're colleagues, and so sometimes even Brahma is instructing Shiva. And Brahma gave some very sage advice, which I pray that we will all meditate upon, dear devotees. He said to Shiva that people like Daksha, they only act with such animosity towards you because they are suffering. If they weren't suffering, they would not be malicious towards you. Therefore, it is not necessary for you to go there and give them more suffering. They're already suffering. And this way, Brahma made a logical reason why retaliation is unnecessary. If someone has some animosity towards you, if someone acts out towards you with malice, it's because they're suffering. If they weren't suffering in heart, they wouldn't act with any malice. And so rather than retaliate thinking, well, I want you to feel the same suffering that you've just done to me, we should recognize they're already suffering. That's the impetus for their actions. And rather we should look at them with pity. So I really appreciate that practical advice from Brahma. It seems so obvious, of course, and yet we see that even in the higher echelons of the universe, sometimes they have issues with this. So let's not feel too bad that sometimes we have conflicts. We want to retaliate. Even way up in the higher planets, even amongst powerful demigods, these things sometimes happen. But we should try to learn, just as Brahma was instructing, that a person who acts with malice towards us, they're already suffering. So just leave it. Retaliation is unnecessary. If your outlook is that I want them to suffer too, it's unnecessary. So anyway, Lord Shiva is a great personality and such an ideal example, as Prabhupada is saying in this purport, of being materially unattached. He went to give out justice to his father-in-law as was deserved. Of course, then he was no longer his father-in-law, because then Sati, she took birth from the Himalayan mountains, became famous as Parvati. So I guess at that point it was okay for Shiva to attack because Daksha was no longer his father-in-law. I don't know, perhaps there's some technical rules about who he's allowed to fight with. So he's materially unattached. And this is very important because the theme of this chapter is about being attached, especially being attached to one's spouse, sexually, and what can happen as a result. And so on that note, I think we should go to the next verse, right? Sahadev Prabhu, you want me to do text number 30 as well? It's a very different subject, so we have to have a little segue here to text number 30. Text 29 is the end of that part where Kashyapa is speaking about why they shouldn't conceive right now, because Lord Shiva is passing by and we should respect his authority. And then from text 30, we hear Maitreya speaking about what happens next. So I will read that verse, dear devotees. Maitreya uvacha shaivam samvidite bhartra manmaton matitendriya jagraha vaso brahmarsher vrishaliva gata trapa. Here it says, and we'll skip the word-for-word translation, that's all right. Maitreya said, Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Of course, you should know that Diti is not a prostitute. She is a very high-class demigoddess, very powerful. But for persons of such high stature, even minor mistakes have huge ramifications. This is a theme that we see throughout all of the Vedic Shastra, through Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata. For us, who are not very powerful entities in the universe, we make little errors here and there. We do things that are a little inappropriate, and it doesn't have huge ramifications. But for powerful persons like Kashyapa and Diti, there are. And so this language being used to describe Diti, it sounds very strong. And Prabhupada is going to say something very strong as well. But we should recognize that for someone who has status, their responsibility is immense. And so their misdemeanors are very serious. So let's keep that in mind. This does not mean that we should disrespect Diti, Kashyapa, are great powerful entities in this universe. Even though they sometimes mess up, we should know that persons who hold positions of power, their actions have huge ramifications. Hence, it said, Vrishali Iva, that she was like a prostitute. It is unbecoming for such a sophisticated person like Diti to be acting in this way, gata trapa, without shame. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the difference between a married wife and a public prostitute is that one is restrained in sex life by the rules and regulations of the scriptures, whereas the other is unrestricted in sex life and is conducted solely by the strong sex urge. Although very enlightened, Kashyapa, the great sage, became a victim of his prostitute wife. Such is the strong force of material energy. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. These sort of purports, these sort of statements can make us uncomfortable, especially in our modern world, very post-feminist world. We don't like this sort of language describing women, although we should remember, of course, that there are many, many places, far more places, where Srila Prabhupada is criticizing men. But somehow that doesn't stand out as much because of the particular modern environment we live in now. So let's just be fair. But there is that potential in all female bodies as well to become gata trapa, shameless, and vrishali iva, shameless like a prostitute. That's not to say, of course, that all women are like that. Obviously not. Or that even most. But in all material bodies, there is the potential for complete degradation. What seems like a very minor thing between Diti and Kashyapa is quite degraded because of their high status. So we should recognize that anyone who has a material body has the potential to become degraded and to make such error as to cause pain and suffering and even destruction of their life and others. That's why when Srila Prabhupada says in the famous purport that women love a man who is expert in rape, we should consider what he's talking about is the potential for complete degradation. It's there in female bodies too. We might not like to hear it, again, because of the particular social climate we live in now. But that potential is there in all material bodies. Men, I think it's a bit more obvious. I don't think there's any man who's going to say, no, I don't have potential for degradation. I think every man knows what potential is there in the deepest, darkest, most disgusting places in their hearts. But perhaps the fairer sex also needs to learn from this example here, that anyone who has a material body is prone to degradation, even powerful persons like Diti and Kashyapa. And she became Vrishali Iva, like a public prostitute, Gata Trapa, and without shame. So that consciousness of hers was very inauspicious. The time was inauspicious. In consideration of her responsibilities is very inauspicious, and therefore the result, of course, was very inauspicious. Kashyapa, of course, is not innocent here. He became victimized by that desire. Although he is enlightened and a powerful sage, still, anyone can be bewildered by the material senses. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, a verse which is going to jump back into my brain in just a second. I can't remember. In chapter 2, that any one of the roaming senses can bewilder the mind of even an intelligent person who's endeavoring to control them. I wish I could remember the Sanskrit. That was very nice. Anyway, even for very intelligent persons, Krishna says, even very intelligent persons who are explicitly endeavoring to control the senses, still, Krishna says, those senses are so strong, they can bewilder even an intelligent man who is endeavoring to control them. So we hear these stories all the time in Bhagavatam to remind us. I have to be very careful. We don't have such high status as Kashyapa and Diti and Shiva and Parvati and Daksha, and so, what we do in the privacy of our own home doesn't seem to have a big effect, and so we might think, well, what's the big deal? But still, the potential for degradation is always there, and any time that there is sexual activity, it is like playing with fire. That's the moral of this story. It's a spectrum, though. Obviously, it's better to be married and to keep that fire in one place. It's like if you have a fireplace at home, you keep the fire in one place. You don't just make fires anywhere. It'll cause complete destruction. We try to keep the fire in the fireplace. That's what I always tell my kids. Since we have a fireplace and it's winter time, the fire stays in the fireplace. You don't do it anywhere else. So similarly, if the sexual proclivity is contained within a marriage, it's certainly better. But it's always dangerous. There's always risk that by indulgence, degradation can increase. And we might think that although we are sophisticated and pure-hearted devotees, that we could never do something so horrible like Daksha did with his insults or become some sort of prostitute. And yet, it happens. Nobody plans to become degraded by the material energy, and yet it happens, even to intelligent people who are endeavoring to control their senses. So, this story is very instructive for us. It's very instructive. As we know, Diti, she did convince her husband Kashyapa to satisfy her sexual desire. We won't get into Kashyapa's motivation, but he should have done better. He did not. But then he recognized immediately, they both recognized immediately, that because of the unauspicious time, because of our state of consciousness of being Vrishtali Iva, just like a prostitute, shameless in our desire, that therefore the children that are conceived are going to be inauspicious for the universe. Kashyapa could immediately recognize that now you're going to have two sons who will terrorize the universe. In fact, that's the part that we're reading in our Gita Nagari Bhagavatam classes now. Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, that they're going to terrorize the universe, enemies of Lord Vishnu, and that this is a big problem. What's interesting to note is that Diti immediately felt shame. Here in this verse, she's Gata Trapa, feels without shame. But immediately afterwards, both Diti and Kashyapa, they felt shame. And, don't shoot the messenger, but this is very frequently the story of sexual gratification. And I won't ask anybody to raise their hand and share experiences, but I think most know that repetitive story. It's a rerun. It happens again and again and again. The repetitive story of sexual gratification is to be katatrapa, shameless before the act, and then feeling a lot of shame after the act. Even for great personalities way up in higher realms of this universe. So who are we to think otherwise? We are certainly not an exception to this. We are certainly not able to avoid or dodge the shame that's felt by sexual indulgence, if even great powerful entities can't do it. It's simply contrary to spiritual life. It's contrary to the cultivation of loving service to Radha and Krishna. Although the sexual act can be used in service to Krishna, the attitude of exploiting another's body for gratification is always going to be followed by some shame. If it's kept within married life, certainly it's less. There's no doubt about it. But even married couples can testify to having conflict and some of the detrimental results of overindulgence. So Diti and Kashyapa, they immediately felt shame. Diti immediately inquired from her husband, actually begging him pitifully, how can I rectify this? I've done something I shouldn't have. And she felt guilty for making Kashyapa do it, although he was also guilty. And so she's like imploring him, please, how can we resolve this? How can we rectify the situation? And of course, what's described in later chapters of this canto is that Diti performs severe austerities to try to counteract some of the inauspiciousness of the impregnation. She recognized there was an inauspicious conception, but that's not the end of it. It's not all set in stone. I can counteract it by doing something very auspicious. And so she does all these austerities. I think some of you remember there's a lot of fasting, eating only at certain times, staying very, very clean, worshiping the Lord, chanting so many mantras, following strict vows. Can't remember all of them. Bathing 3 times daily, never saying anything harsh with her speech, avoiding all sorts of anger and agitation. She went on like this for a whole year, eating very simple foods, never taking naps, no sleeping during the day. And it was very powerful austerities. The kind that would naturally bring auspiciousness to anyone in any situation, especially because of her worship of the Lord. So we might think that as this was going along, that yes, she would have success in counteracting the inauspiciousness of her conception. She's very powerful. Kashyapa is very powerful. The austerities they're performing are very powerful. Surely those austerities have value. They're not just useless. All the great sages and the demigods, they're doing austerities, so they're not useless. They're not like ghee poured onto ashes. They must have a result, right? And they did. Except that, again, because Diti and Kashyapa have high status, because they're very powerful, even minor errors can have huge ramifications. It's one of the ongoing themes here. And so Diti, although she was performing her austerities very, very well for a long time, she did eventually err. And she stuck with her vow for almost a full year, but at the very end, she broke the vow when she accidentally just failed to maintain perfect cleanliness. I can't remember the exact detail. Maybe one of you Prabhus remembers. There's something about not washing after eating. I think she went straight to sleep instead of washing in exactly the way that was necessary for the performance of her ritualistic vow. A minor thing. I mean, it's like nothing. If I wash my hands after eating, it's like, do that sometimes. I got kids, there's not much cleanliness going on in this house. When you have young kids, there's no suchiness. So we think like, what's the big deal, right? Those of you who have young children, there's no suchi with children. It's just impossible. It's not until they're maybe 30 years old they can learn to clean themselves properly. So we think, what's the big deal? But again, because of her power, because of her status and her responsibility, as well as Kashyapa, even a minor error can have huge ramifications. And so Indra, being Indra, he entered into her womb to counteract the potential for his own displacement of his power. It's a whole other thing. And was able to undo the results of her performance of severe austerities to counteract the inauspiciousness of her pregnancy. So these are very extreme examples relating to powerful persons who have responsibility and whose every action has huge ramifications. But the lessons are still the same for us. The first lesson we should recognize is that even amongst powerful entities in this universe, they're struggling with the same things that we struggle with. Anyone who has a body is going to struggle with these things. Anyone who's embodied, whether you have a very powerful body like a demigod, or they have a very lowly body like a pig, they're still struggling. Still struggling with sex desire, with inauspiciousness, with a consciousness of exploitation. And we can learn, in fact, the reason why their stories are here in Srimad Bhagavatam is so that we can learn. So that we can learn to maintain a pure state of consciousness, to learn that even great powerful entities cannot skirt the hazardous effects of these sort of activities. And so who are we to think that we will somehow beat the material energy, that we will somehow be the exception to the rule? Everyone else who engages in certain activities is suffering, but somehow I'll be different. Somehow I'll be the one who really enjoys while everybody else is struggling. Somehow I'll be the one who really gets my hands on the material energy and doesn't suffer as a result. We're always thinking like this because we're insane. Maybe not all of you, Prabhus, but definitely myself. We think, I'll be the exception. I'll be the one who gets my hands on that material energy, just enjoys the way that I want, and I won't suffer. I'll be the exception to the rule. That's why we need to hear these examples like Lord Shiva and Parvati. We need to hear about Kashyapa and Diti. So we recognize, no, anywhere in this material world, anywhere someone has a material body, these problems are going to be there. The other thing that we should learn is that maintaining Krishna consciousness is the solution to all the problems. Not that I shift the burden from one shoulder to the other by trying to solve one problem, by creating some other material problem, but simply surrendering to the Lord, becoming more Krishna conscious. That is the solution to all these problems. That's what's demonstrated ultimately by Diti and Kashyapa. That's what's demonstrated by Lord Shiva. And that's what we're meant to practice. That's why these verses, that's why these stories are in Srimad Bhagavatam, so we can remember, just be Krishna conscious. Avoid all of this. Just be Krishna conscious. Whether you're married or single, whether you have a lot, whether you have a little, whether you have status or power, whether you have nothing, in all situations, be Krishna conscious and avoid the problem. Cut out the issue at its root. That's what Rupa Goswami says in the Upadeshamrita, right? Tadgadamula hantri. I just want to recite that verse, and then I'm going to be done with this. What is that though? Mula hantri. Hantri means to cut, and mula is the root. Syat, that's right. This is my ultimate conclusion, dear devotees, and then I'm done here. The moral of the story, what we're meant to learn from all of these is just Syat Krishna Nama Charitari Sutaptya Vidya Pito Patapta Rasanasya Narochikanyu Kinvadarad Anuvidam Kal Saiva Justam Svadvik Kramad Bhavati Tad Karamula Hantri. That there's the root of our problems, the root of our attachment to this world, that even the great demigods and powerful entities and sages like Kashyapa are struggling with, is this ignorance of Krishna as the origin of pleasure, this ignorance of Krishna as the best friend, this ignorance of Krishna as the controller of everything. To varying degrees, we're all forgetful, we're all ignorant. That's the root of our problem. And so Rupa Goswami says, we cut this out. We cut out this problem at the root, this disease of avidya, by Syat Krishna Nama Charita Adi, always indulging in the sweet, sweet holy names, form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And it's so sweet that it can cure the disease of this ignorance which causes our attachment to this material world, which causes our bewilderment by the sexual energy, which causes our inauspicious activities. We can cut it out at the root by taking the sweetness of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and activities all the time, tasting them, placing them upon the tongue, hearing them and tasting them, relishing their flavor. And even if in the beginning it doesn't taste relishable to us, like someone who has the disease of jaundice, still, if we very carefully take that medicine by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam all the time, by always attending the Bhagavatam class that's organized by Sahadeva Prabhu, or always hearing, then that disease will be destroyed at the root. Just like jaundice is cured by taking sugarcane juice. The jaundice makes the sugarcane taste bitter, actually. So similarly, our attachment to this material world, our attachment to sexual desire, makes these stories taste bitter to us. Oh, I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to hear about other people struggling with sex desire. I want to hear some encouraging stories. I want to hear encouragement for my material desire. I don't want to tune into Bhagavatam class today and hear another guilt trip about having the body. And, oh no, not again. Why can't we hear some encouragement about sexual desire? Let me turn on the television, then I'll get some good encouragement. Yes. This is our avidya. And this is exactly what Rupa Goswami is saying. That even that sweet holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord, it can taste bitter on our tongue while we're affected with this disease. But if we carefully continue to take this medicine, that disease is destroyed, cut out at the root, tadgara mula hantri. And all that lust that's in the heart will be eradicated. This is what we need to learn from this pastime of sexual desire and its ramifications. One more shloka, and then I'm really done. Similarly, in the discussion about Vrindavan, when Shukdev Goswami is speaking with Parikshit Maharaj, he's describing all the wonderful qualities of Krishna and Vrindavan, and he begins to speak about the gopis and their loving exchanges with Krishna, and how they don't even see Krishna as God, and they run away from their husbands to go and be with Krishna. Maharaj Parikshit was a little concerned that hearing this sort of thing was licentious. It sounds debauched. What if people misunderstand? He raises the doubt that these gopis, they don't even know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and yet they have this intense love for him, such that they're willing to cheat on the material energy, cheat on their husbands just to be with Krishna. Is it that anybody who has such intense love for anything will achieve the same result? Shukadeva Goswami makes very clear, no. Only that intense love for Krishna completely eradicates lust that's in the heart. And he says something, Vikriditam vrajavadu bir idam cha Vishnu. He said you need to understand that these loving pastimes between Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Vrajavadu, the wives of Vrindavan, they're married. Vikriditam vrajavadu bir idam cha Vishnu. This is something very spiritual. Sharanvita anushanayad atavarnayadya. This is actually transcendental activity. And if one hears it very faithfully from the right source, Sharanvita anushanayad atavarnayadya, bhakti param bhagavati pratilabhya. The highest moods of devotion, bhakti param, that mood of intense love for Radha and Krishna awakens with the heart. Labhya kamam hridrogam ashvapayinota charena dira. And finally, all that kama roga, that disease of selfish desire, that disease of sexual desire, of exploitation of others' bodies, will finally be eradicated from the heart. By hearing with faith, Sharanvita Anushanayat, hearing with faith about the Vrajavadu, the married women of Vrindavan, and Krishna, Vishnu. So we need to take this medicine, dear devotees, if we want to avoid the circumstances that we're hearing about with Shiva and Daksha and Parvati and with Kashyapa and Diti. If we want to learn the lesson here, it's not that we should judge them and because we suffer in the same way. It's not that we should disrespect their post and their status and their power, but we should learn. Anyone who's got a material body is prone to this degradation. We must take the medicine of hearing and chanting about Sri Sri Radha and Krishna to become cured. Chanting the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. Hare Krishna. I hope that that lesson is valuable to some of you. Perhaps it's most valuable to me because I'm still a young man. My body still is full of desire. Fortunately, the arrangement of the Lord, as we get older, the desires should become weaker and weaker as the body gets weaker, at least if we've practiced. Of course, nowadays we have this very weird culture where it's like you're trying to keep the desire going longer and longer, take pills so that you can continue to perform in bed even when you're 75, 80 years old. And it's just, those of us who are grihastas, we should know we're in the grihasta ashram so that we can get over it. So that we can learn from the examples of Kashyapa and Diti that at some point we have to get over all this stuff. We got to get over it, cut out that disease of desire in the heart by saturating ourselves with the holy names of the Lord, swimming, diving, splashing, and drowning in the ocean of the Lord's wonderful name, form, qualities, and pastimes. And it is especially sweet to swim, splash, dive, and drown in the association of great devotees like all of you Prabhus who very kindly tuned in and listened to my self-afflicted therapy session today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Gaur Premanandi.
Hare 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 Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. His praise. YASODEVA Prabhu. Oh, man. I must say, of course, devotees, Hare Krishna. I see one hand up. So whoever has questions, comments, reflections, you use your hand emoji or your physical hand and you can ask your question. But I have this quick thing to say. Before the class started, I came here with a little bit of a heavy heart because of certain things going on in my crazy head. But when you started speaking, somehow I started feeling lighter. And then I remember there is a song, it says, I believe I can fly. And I think it's true that it's a fact that one can fly. Maybe because I know you personally, YASODEVA Prabhu, that is what is also adding to this freeness that I'm feeling in my body, in my consciousness. All I can say is thank you so much. And I am nobody to shower blessings upon you, but I pray that I could have your association more and more. And may Sri Guru Krishna continue to bless you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful katha. With that, Anadi Dinam Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, everything Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisance.
Jai.
Yes, thank you for the nectar.
Thank you for listening. It adds to the nectar, knowing that devotees want to hear the nectar. Thank you.
Most especially, I like the choice of languages relating to women. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhu, when you were speaking, a whole lot of things are also going through my little mind. But first of all, I wanted to know, was the Shiva the source of Dasha's words? Because I know in Vedic times, is the father-in-law who's supposed to pay the dowry. So, yeah, Dasha just don't want Shiva's presence. So I don't know why Shiva to storm his arena and punish everyone. And to earth is human. Shiva himself, I believe he made a mistake by giving a boon to one demon. And eventually Lord Vishnu have to come in to save him. So if that is the first time that Dasha made such a mistake, why will Shiva storm his arena and destroy everything? Knowing very well that he himself had that tendency of committing mistakes. So this is my first question. I have a lot of questions, but I would like you to attend to this. Hare Krishna.
I don't know if I can answer the question, Prabhu. I don't recall if Daksha paid any dowry. I'm not sure if he did. You think that then he wouldn't be upset. But I mean, Shiva is eternally like this. He's eternally in that position. He's eternally renounced. Of course, his wife is eternally his wife. I think that Daksha had the good fortune to have Sati as his daughter, but then he was disappointed because she is destined to be with her eternal husband, Shiva. So I don't think it would have mattered if there was a dowry paid or if anything had worked out, because she was destined to be with Shiva regardless. Daksha, of course, we recognize that his psychology was much more materialistic because his role in the universe is literally to procreate. Naturally, if any man's job was just to have sex, he'd be a little bit proud. I think many of us, maybe as teenage boys, would just fantasize about having a job where I get paid to just have sex all the time, because that's literally what Daksha's job is. And so, his arrogance, his pride in his own position and in his status for having such a huge dynasty was more the cause of the problem than Shiva and Sati, for sure. That's all I can say about that. I can't analyze their psychology much more than that. But we should know that, as Prabhupada said explicitly, Daksha has a lot of pride because of his occupation, which probably most of us would be similarly proud if that was our full-time job. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm sorry, I can't give any more details to the story than that.
Hare Krishna. Well,
Perhaps Sahadev Prabhu knows more.
No, I don't. Thank you so much. Thakur Murari Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. And nice to see you. I'm so far away, but I'm still very near.
Haribo Thakur Murari. I hope you're well, Prabhu. Nice to hear
I'm
your
okay.
voice.
Yes, okay. So thank you for the presentation. Just a point though on the Lord Krishna's plan and our activities to fit in there. For example, the Lord wanted to have a pastime. So could it possible that the Lord arranged for DT and Kashapa to have the interaction that in auspicious time so that those personalities would come? Is that a part of the Leela? Would you say a part of the Leela? I mean,
that is often the ultimate cause of the Leela. I don't know if it's explicitly stated in this chapter or other chapters that this is all the arrangement of the Lord. I mean, ultimately, the material universe is an arrangement of the Lord for everybody to eventually go back home, back to Godhead, and he does it in so many ways. So hardly anything could be considered not, at least indirectly, arranged by the Lord. But I don't know if it's explicitly stated that he wanted Diti and Kashyapa to procreate at an inauspicious time. We do know that it's explicitly stated that the Lord wanted to enjoy the chivalrous rasa of fighting, and that therefore simultaneously Jaya and Vijaya, were, how should we say, banished from their post in Vaikuntha and entered into the bodies of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu and some other forms, so that the Lord could enjoy fighting. So that part is certainly the Lord's Leela, as we know, because Lord Nrsingadev comes and enjoys, as does Lord Ramachandra and other forms. But I don't know if we can say explicitly that the Lord wanted Diti and Kashyapa to procreate at an inauspicious time. I don't know. That might be a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, we could send a message. If we could send a message to ask the Lord if he, I know, I'm saying that, as you were saying, maybe you could send a message.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for fun. So before I go, so I'm thinking though, is as you said, there are lessons for us to learn in those pastimes in Bhagavatam, all of those stories, there are lessons for us to learn. And the fact is that when you say Ardastako as opposed to Cash App Money, in other words, no. Look at,
Yes.
Vishamita, they got, so depends on level of purity. Plus, Kadava Mundi too, in terms of those pastimes. He was a sage, but he did what he had to do and left. So, as they say, lessons for us to learn. Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
Prabhu. Yes, such an important contrast.
Yes.
Haridas Thakur was in a similar situation, but because of his taking shelter of the holy names,
Yes.
he was able to overcome. Kashyapa Muni is described as being a great Brahmana and enlightened, but that doesn't necessarily mean he had the same devotion to chanting the holy names like Haridas Thakur, who was able to resist Maya Devi herself. So thank you for making that comparison.
Hare Krishna. But Prabhuji, I have one quick question before we go to Anadina Prabhu. My question, Prabhuji, is that, see, I really appreciated the question and the comment that Kumurari was making and the response you gave, in the sense that I see most of the time people will say that whatever happens is Krishna's arrangement. And I have been arguing, I don't know how many times I have to argue. Probably I will have to argue like that for the rest of my devotional life in this material existence. Because if we assume that whatever happens is Krishna's plan, is Krishna's arrangement, then that person didn't meet is Krishna's plan. Why are we trying to change Krishna's plan for such a person? But I think, like the answer you gave, that we are humans, we have our independence, and we have some independence to some extent. We can choose to do or not to do certain things. And so Kashyapa DT having this engagement, I will also really, really doubt that Krishna arranged that they should disregard the proper timing for cohabitation. No, if that happens to be the case, or whatever happens is Krishna's plan, then who are we to even go out to preach to people, don't do this, don't do that? That is Krishna's plan for them. No. But my question is, there is this story about Sagar Singh, where this guy was so rich, his horse died, and he shaved his head and was mourning, and everybody saw him, and they were also mourning without knowing what
I love that story.
was he mourning about, So I am with this understanding and approach that technically we should not be saying that we are following Vedic civilization. Because in the Vedic civilization, women were performing this sati rite all the way until 1987, which is very, very present. That Indian government abolished it. And in those days, which we consider Vedic age, when women committed literally suicide, they were glorified. But we understand that that is wrong because the circumstances around how Sati burned her body is nowhere close to why wives were throwing themselves into their husband's funeral pie. So my question to you, with all my long talk, is that what do we learn as devotees? Do we follow just what Srila Prabhupada has tailored for us, or we just read anything from the scriptures and we say it's in the scriptures so we can follow? What is the right thing for us to do?
That's quite a question, Prabhu. And I'm nobody's guru, so you don't have to accept anything that I say. But I think that Srila Prabhupada wrote so many things in the scriptures. He's given us so many great translations. He's given us great purports, and he's talked about things that have happened millions and billions of years ago or in places on the other side of the universe. And I don't think that we're expected to do every single thing just because it's in the scripture, because Srila Prabhupada also demonstrated using intelligence to adapt to time, place, and circumstance, to recognizing what is the appropriate application, and to not become dogmatic. I don't think Srila Prabhupada was a dogmatist. I think that he always considered what is the best way to serve Krishna. Dogmatism is that there's just this formula, and you just do that, and don't think outside of that, and don't imagine anything else. But Prabhupada always considered what is the best way to serve Krishna, and the best way to induce people to chant the holy names of the Lord and to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And this issue is addressed by Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, by the way, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in chapter 6. Rupa Goswami, he makes very clear that there are some things which are essential principles. And he lists, particularly having a spiritual master, following the instructions of a spiritual master, serving the spiritual master, and some other things that he lists. He said those are essential principles, and they cannot be changed. And he said there are many other things that are details that can be changed. And I think we need to recognize, by using our intelligence, what is the appropriate way to serve Krishna, rather than just being dogmatic. I don't think that anyone should be performing the sati rite in 2025 or 2026. If there's a woman who really misses her deceased husband so much that she cannot live, no one will be able to stop her anyway. So we don't need to make some rule for it. I've never met such a woman. Dear Mataji, better to stay here and do a little more service than follow your husband. Even if you really love him, and if he passes away, better to just keep doing some more service in separation. That's my opinion. But what you're asking, Prabhu, of course, is an ongoing discussion, and I think it's one that really characterizes ISKCON. I think it's what makes ISKCON great, actually, is that we have such a variety of members, and that there's a variety of perspectives, and that devotees want to apply devotional principles in such a variety of ways, and differently in different regions or with different demographics. And I think that's our strength in ISKCON, is that we have such variety. Now, it means inevitably there will be debate. But I think debate is a welcome alternative to the utopian fantasy of uniformity, where everybody's going to do things in the exact same way. Everybody's going to follow some scriptural rules right down to the T, or everybody's going to, be completely uniform. I think that's a fantasy which is very dangerous, and historically it's shown that doesn't work out very well. But that we have such variety of perspectives and applications because of our diverse ISKCON community, I think it's a strength. And it means that we have to use our intelligence. We have to talk with devotees, work together to decide how to best serve Krishna in all situations. We can't just rely on some sort of code written somewhere.
Beautiful. Prabhuji,
that's my opinion.
So yeah, no,
everybody's got an opinion, but that one's mine.
I appreciate it so much. So my follow-up question is, so what happens in devotional environment where debate is not tolerated? When
I think that's really bad.
Like you said, I'm an individual, you are an individual. You have your perspective, I have my perspective. We all trying to rally around the truth, but my understanding, your understanding is a little bit different. But when we get together and we discuss, that is the way we have the possibility of we coming to one point and we
Yes.
all accept it. But
Yeah.
if there is a situation where it is said that devotees having a debate or having a discussion and exchanges, except somebody is, excuse me to say, blasphemous or insulting, which is a different thing. But just exchanging opinions and being stopped, what will that account to?
Yes. Prabhu, I 100% agree with you. But we should consider that there's appropriate times to express contrary opinions. Maybe it's not always appropriate to do it at the end of at a Bhagavatam class. You know, maybe that's not the best time to start complaining about this leader doing this thing or doing that thing. But still, there should be some avenue for devotees to discuss everything. And I think if a community is somehow suppressing the need to talk about something, then that's going to be even more problematic than the thing itself. You know, but it's also important for every individual in a community to consider what is the best way that I can address my concerns, to express my concerns. I shouldn't be selfish and just blast it on everybody over prasadam, but try to create the forum, you know, like to spill my poison in everybody's ears, right? Sometimes we have this malice towards some devotee and you just want to like poison somebody else. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you don't do that, but I have in the past. But every individual should consider what is the best way for me to, in the interest of serving Krishna, express this concern. So if that means creating a special meeting, Ishtagoshti, creating a forum where that discussion should be in place, and so it doesn't compromise the Bhagavatam class or just peacefully eating prasadam together, then that should be done. But there must be communication, there must be expression, there must be debate. The alternative is worse. If devotees can't express what they feel about certain things or their opinions on certain things or express their frustration with certain things, then that'll be even worse. Still, the appropriate time and forum is so important. And that's what the Ishtagoshti is supposed to be for. How to serve the Lord. Devotees coming together to meet and discuss how can we best serve the Lord. So I know it's easy to say it, it's a lot harder to do it, but we have to try it. And every individual who really wants to be a part of Prabhupada's community, to be a part of ISKCON, should remember that if my real interest is to serve Krishna, then I will do whatever I can for that. If my interest is just to stir up the hornet's nest, then maybe it's better I do keep my mouth shut. If my interest is really to serve Krishna, to improve Krishna's community, to expand Krishna's enterprises, then I'll find the appropriate means to do it and not just spew anger all over the place. It's an individual responsibility. There's also an institutional responsibility. Community leaders need to create that environment where they can speak, need to create the forums where they can express themselves. So it's a cooperation between individual and the institution.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
There, solved. Done. Now there'll be no more conflicts in ISKCON because I said it, right?
We hope. But as you were answering, I was remembering an experience I had with my then temple authority. Because those times we were having very, very hard economic hardship. And he kept talking, we have to build a temple, we have to build a big temple. So I will every now and then interject. I said, why are you talking so much about we have to build temple? We don't even have enough to eat. And then he was merciful upon me. He says, but my dear Sahadev, we have to keep talking about it. Because the more we talk about it, the more likelihood that we will be eager to see it happen. And lo and behold, we built the temple, very beautiful temple. You know, and those were the times we were in very, very harsh economic situation. So discussion
This is in West
is good.
Africa or somewhere else?
Yeah, in Ghana, West Africa, yes. Yeah. Another Prabhu, please you me on mute.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity once again. Okay. So, Prabhu, I think there's echo somewhere. I don't know. I think I'm not using two devices. But, Prabhu, can you still hear me, Prabhu?
Sorry, Prabhu, I'm struggling to hear you.
What did you say? Another
I think there is an echo somewhere. Even though I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
using
there
it.
is an echo.
Mute
Does
myself.
anyone have two devices turned on? Well, all right. So is that what you were saying? Then we go to
No,
okay, you go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question, but
Sure,
I was
go
thinking
ahead.
because of the echo.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So, yeah, Prabhu, thank you very much for the opportunity once again.
Yeah.
So, my question is, see, talking about Grihasta to remain purely and still perform his Grihasta duties diligently, because one purport in Shima Bhagavatam relating to Kadambamuni and Devahuti.
And I didn't you're breaking up. You were talking about Kadamamuni and Devawiti. You may continue from there.
Okay, then let's.
You are muted. I think he's having connection issues. So we've got Arichakra Prabhu, please you may unmute while he tries to reconnect.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat. All glories to you. All glories to Gurudev, all glories to Prabhupada, and all glories to the assembly of devotees. The first contribution I'm trying to give, then I ask my question. It's about what Anadinidam Prabhu was saying. And the answer you gave that there should always be a forum to discuss issues, pertinent issues when it comes to devotees. But unfortunately, somehow or the other, my personal observation is that most devotees today have become like one politician who used to be in Ghana, even though he's passed away. Whenever they are in power and the opposition brings out an idea, he will personally tell them that politician's name was Kroboduse. He will tell the opposition that, hey, you have a very wonderful idea. It's very good, but we won't take it. You see, so a lot of people are like that, even though we claim to be in a devotional environment. But practically, my personal realization that there are a lot of people who will take an entrenched position, and no matter how much you discuss, they will tell you they will not take whatever suggestion you bring, because it has no value to them. When it happens like that, what do? So this is just by the way.
I hear you, Prabhu. I hear you, and I believe it, and I see it too. Still, having the opportunity to speak, to say something, to give an idea is important, even if it's not fruitful.
Okay.
And I think if we just stop doing it, if we just stop communicating because we think, oh, no one wants to hear it, or no one will listen, or I don't want to have a conflict, then it might be even worse.
Yes. Thank you.
It's true. I mean, it's Kali Yuga. How many people change their minds in Kali Yuga, right? We're all so rigid. We're all just like, I know everything. I don't want to hear anything else. But still, we should try for Krishna.
Yeah. And my second comment is about the first question. Was it Sade who asked the question or Anadini Danam? No, Anadini Danam asked the question, and Sade also asked a follow-up question about everything not being Krishna's arrangement. Like, say, if something is happening and we are thinking, oh, it's Krishna's arrangement, then why do we even have to try to address issues? My comment is that the question Anandini Nam asked you is that Sutta Goswami answered that question when they met the sages at Namisharanga. When they met, and the question was posed to Sutta Goswami, right? About how does the people of Kali Yuga, how would they be able to live and be able to what we call it, perfect their existence to be able to go back home. And Sutta Goswami immediately make the reference to the discussion between uh, Parishit and
Shikadev.
Shukadev.
uh, Sukadeva Goswami, which is the Bhagavatam. So, in other words, everything that is being said in the Bhagavatam, even though it might be the life of what we call Dasha, it might be the life of Diti becoming lusty and luring the husband to come. But whatever is there stated in the Bhagavatam is for our benefit.
Hmm.
Sukadeva Goswami explain all these things, even though some of them look like, if you bring it to our material, our everyday way of understanding, it looks like, what sort of behavior is this? But they are there because Sukadeva Goswami knew that everybody in the material world, most people are going to go through similar issues, and hence he gives the scenario, and then also he gives the solution. Because if we don't get a scenario and a solution, then we will be always be cracking our head, hitting our head there and there. Everybody will be what do we call it, propagating his or her own philosophy.
Hmm.
So I guess every single thing that is stated in the Bhagavatam is for us, is to help us
Hmm.
to learn our lesson. So whether it's a lusty desire, whether it's what, because all these great personalities, if they can fall victims to lust, then this should tell us something, that we cannot be proud.
Hmm. We are
Look
not
at the
exceptions.
we are not exceptions, and of course we are even so low that we have to be extremely careful. Because look at the story of Lord Shiva chasing Mohini. If an exalted person like Lord Shiva can be running after Mohini and be ejaculating, then what? What to think of me, Harichakra? If I see my beautiful wife, you think I can go? What do we call it? I can close my eyes and think I'm a Dira. So all these things are there to let us know that, look, hey, you cannot play with material energy.
Hmm.
So you should follow the Bhagavatam and take shelter of the pure devotees. That is the only means by which you can safeguard yourself. So personally, I'm thinking that whether it was the desire of the individual or it was Krishna's arrangement, every single thing that is stated in the Bhagavatam is purposely there for us to learn our lessons so
Hmm.
that we can live properly in this world. This is my 2 pence contribution. Hare Krishna.
Amen. Thank you, Prabhu. And by mentioning the sages at Naimisharanya and their concern for the Kali Yuga, you've also resolved our discussion about how devotees can solve conflicts. The solution is we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam all the time. We should all come together for Bhagavatam class all the time. And in that context, in that setting, we hear not just about situations, but also about the solutions, which is to become more Krishna conscious. That's the real problem solving. And Sutta Goswami, he knew this, and he actually said a very famous verse: Krishna svadama pagate dharma gyana dipisaha kalonashta dishamesha puranarko dinodita. That Krishna's gone to his abode, his dhamma, along with jnana, dharma, all the good qualities. They've returned to Krishna's abode. But that this Bhagavatam is like the sun for persons who have lost their vision due to the darkness of the age of Kali. You know, when we have conflicts amongst devotees, it's because we want some perfect leader, which is impossible in the Kali Yuga, in this material world. We want to have Krishna as the leader. But we have Srimad Bhagavatam. That should be the constitution for the devotees and their communities to discuss. That should be the context in which they discuss whatever issues might be there, whatever problems might arise, whatever is unfulfilled, or whatever could be improved. In the context of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is the sun which gives us clear vision. So I think Hari Chakraprabhu has said something very brilliant. It's a real aha moment for me. Thank you so much, Hari Chakraprabhu. Now I'm ready to become a Krishna conscious politician. My platform will just be, here's Srimad Bhagavatam all day, every day. That's the solution to all the problems. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. If I may ask one last question, Prabhuji.
Okay.
And
I don't hear my kids crying downstairs,
Yeah.
so I guess I've got a few more minutes.
Yes, so this should be the last one. And that is, we know how Kashyapa, according to Srila Prabhupada, was not strong enough, so he fell to his wife's demands. Now, there is, what is the name? Yamuna Acharya, who said that now that he's taking shelter at lotus feet of Shri Mukunda and enjoying.
He spits at the thought of sex
He
life.
spits at the thought. So my question is it that he is showing us, like Arichakra Prabhu is saying, he's showing us that there's a possibility, but we see that oftentimes lots of great people, they fall victim. So I'm trying to figure out, how does one spit at the thought, and how does one let his staff drop from his hand at the charming dance of a lady like a Vishwamitra? What brings the difference?
It's just like when we were children, Prabhu. We were obsessed with a particular toy, perhaps. For me, it was my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle doll that I got once. It was this big. I just thought it was everything. I carried this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle doll with me everywhere, and I just loved it. It's like so important to me. But now as an adult, if I look back at some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toy, it's like, who cares, you know? So we have the same attachment for sexuality, for a woman's body or for a male body. And it's just like a child's attachment to a toy. And it's hard for us to imagine that we can become mature and see it with the same disinterest as we now see some toys. Like kids' toys. You know, my house is covered in toys, by the way. I've got a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old. All the neighborhood kids play here. I can't even walk. I don't want to see toys. I literally spit at the thought of seeing plastic toys over the ground. Literally. Like, my God, get them away from me. So what's the difference? I've matured. My desires become more sophisticated. My interests have become more sophisticated. So similarly, as we mature in Krishna consciousness, our desire to please Radha and Krishna becomes more sophisticated. And sex life is just like, so what? I don't know how to do that. I haven't done it yet, but I believe that the transformation is possible. And I do know how to do it. We chant Hare Krishna. Labhya kamam hridrogam ashvapahinot acharena dira. By hearing and chanting about Krishna and the gopis, that lust which is in the heart will be eliminated and replaced with bhakti param bhagavati pratilabhya, pure devotional service. But that transformation is very familiar to us. Just like we do not care about the entertainment that we loved as a child anymore. We don't care about whatever playthings we used to have. Similarly, as we mature in Krishna consciousness, we'll no longer be interested in physiology and psychology, bodies interacting on different dimensions.
Well, thank you so
It's
much.
happening. It will happen.
Yes, yes, it is a possibility. And we will continue to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the assembly of Vaishnava devotees
Jai.
and get cleansed. It may take a while, but eventually we will get there, as long as we are in the boat of transcendence. So thank you so much.
You continue, Sahadev Prabhu. You are the captain of this boat, and we're so
No.
grateful with your persistence. No, I know, because I also have a little community. You know, I've done some preaching
Yes,
programs, and
I
I know
know.
that you need someone who just, no matter what, just keeps saying, "Hey, we're doing this. We're doing this regularly. It doesn't matter how mental we are. It doesn't matter what the weather is. We're just doing it anyway." So I appreciate you for being that person who's very persistent, always messaging. Can you do the Bhagavatam class? Do the Bhagavatam class. Come on. So thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the harassment.
I pray to be harassed by you like this for eternity, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Well, dear devotees, Hare Krishna, we thank you all as always, and please, we humbly requesting you all to kindly unmute your microphone, and we all with one heart, one love, chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace Yashodev, for sharing his love and wisdom with us all. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva Putana
Vaishnavibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo
Ananta Koti
Namaha.
Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Glorious Grace Yashodev Prabhu ki Jai. All Krishna Prabhupada ki Jai. All Goddess Assembled Vaishnava Devotees ki